Welcome to Nightlight. Step away from the mainstream and gather around as we enlighten the world and our realities and travel this cosmic journey we call life. Join us as we share with you and provide that beacon that can guide us all to a better way. Explore with us as we examine a metaphysical montage of spiritual insights, covering everything from the mundane to the magical, UFOs to unicorns, and everything in between. This is a time of awakening, of sharing and evolving, of spreading our wings and soaring on the cosmic breath of creation. Come and join with other light-minded spirits as we weave our lights together to seek understanding, enlightenment, and with a little luck, some wisdom. This is Nightlight, a reminder that you are never alone.
Welcome to Nightlight, everybody. So glad you could join us tonight. It's going to be an exciting show. I want to thank first Ken Quiethawk for his amazing intro. He and his wife are native storytellers, and you can find them on the internet. They have preserved an age-old tradition of preserving history, cosmology, and wisdom in stories that can be told around the campfires for generations and generations. It's an amazing tradition, so please check him out. He and his wife are spectacular. That's Ken Quiethawk and Native Storytellers. Tonight I have one of the shows that I so look forward to every month. I have with me tonight Mary Joyce, who is the editor of Skyships Over Cashiers. And this is a phenomenal website. I encourage everybody to check it out, but wait till the show's over. And she puts up well-researched phenomena on her website. You won't find garbage there for sure. You'll find things that are documented and that she has thoroughly researched. And the website covers so many different aspects of things that are going on these days that it is a pleasure to look at. Her articles are short. They're the kind of articles that will trigger you into doing more research on your own. She titillates you with material so that you have to read further, and her archives go back decades. So you can check out the work she's done and see how far she's come with a lot of her material. She's an amazing lady, and I'm so glad she's here tonight to talk with me. Welcome to the show, Mary.
Hi there. You always give such nice introductions. Thank you so much.
Well, I always make sure I have nice people so I can do that.
Okay, well, that's a good plan.
Yes. If you have people that are creeps, it's very hard to say nice things about creeps, and besides that, you don't really want to spend any amount of time with them anyhow.
And I don't think your listeners would expect you to sign one of those up for them to listen to.
Nope. There have been times where by accident I've put somebody on the schedule, and then when I get to really speak with them, it's like this just isn't appropriate for the show. And basically the way I say no thank you to them, I usually just say, your material is just so far above me, I can't do you justice.
How nice.
Well,
Anyhow, you and I talked earlier about what we might discuss tonight, and we kind of zeroed in on the secret base that's been built under the Smoky Mountain National Park. And that is the most visited park in the country because it is so close to so many metropolitan areas or larger populations. I think it has somewhere between 2 and 3 times the number of visitors than any of the other national parks. And it's quite large.
Wow.
It's over 500,000 acres. So it's it kind of blends in the mountains, but it's bigger in many ways than people might guess. the last thing that most people would expect is that our military has built a secret facility beneath that park. And I thought your listeners might find that somewhat interesting.
Well, fascinating. First of all, if it's a secret facility, it's not a secret any longer.
Yeah, but that's true. But anyhow, I was very, very fortunate because there were 3 people, all who had some military background, who I knew before this construction at the park began. And so I already had reasons to trust the witnesses that were beginning to see things that were very strange going on at the park. And it became noticeable to them in about 2010. I didn't really get the whole story until about 2013, when I began to really weave it all together. It started with this one couple. Both of them have a military background, and they were just south of the park, which is also south of Cherokee Reservation. And they saw this very strange tractor-trailer with a very odd thing on the back of it. And because of their military background, they said it looked just like a decontamination chamber. Well, the man who I call Clark is not shy, and he'll have a conversation with anybody. And he went up and started talking to the truck driver. And he found out that this truck driver, who happened to be a woman, was waiting there with this piece of equipment, and she was waiting for 5 more trucks to arrive, and also with their escorts. And so the couple just kind of hung around just to see what would happen. And the 5 other trucks showed up. They had tarps over them that had U.S. Air Force letters on it, on the tarps. And they were followed by, like security guards that were in white SUVs, were dressed in black, and had guns. So right off the bat, that's really, really unusual. And so at a distance, this couple followed this convoy. And there's one road that goes between North Carolina and Tennessee right through the park. And this is the route that this convoy took. And they went past the visitor center, which many people may have actually been to. It's called the Konalupke Visitor Center. And just beyond it, there's a campground called Smokemont. And this whole convoy pulled into there, and as soon as they all got through the gate was shut, so nobody else could go through. The woman truck driver that the man had first talked to had said that they were taking equipment to a place where it would be airlifted to someplace else. To this day, we don't know of any kind of a road that will get you to the facility. It's built beneath something that's known as Hintuga Ridge, which is in the eastern part of the park, the part that most people don't go to. And so after that, they began to see things like helicopters, the kinds that can carry heavy loads. They would see what they call cartons or packages being dropped in the area where this was being built. They saw Osprey helicopters, I think the kind that can hover and go straight up and down. He even got a photo of some of them. He got a photo of a cargo plane lifting up from the park that still had its cargo door still open, and it was closing as it was flying out of that place. So that was my first introduction to what was going on there. There's more, but I'll take a breath.
Wow. I'm and this is in Virginia.
No, this is in North Carolina.
North Carolina.
Right.
There's another bunker, I think, in Bluemont, Virginia.
There's other underground facilities, especially in the western part of the country. But when I wrote my book, which regretfully has a long title, it's Underground Bases Hidden in North Carolina Mountains, I found witnesses and found evidence myself of a total of 5 different facilities just here in North Carolina. I wrote the book because people really didn't know too much about this kind of thing happening in this part of the country. It was mostly, west of the Mississippi where the stories are more dominant about underground facilities.
Yeah.
So
well,
that's the reason I wrote
think
the book. If somebody else had already done the subject, I wouldn't have written the book. But I thought, oh my God, this is this has not been covered, and so that was my motivation.
Well, I think it's fascinating that I think it's important that people understand that there are underground facilities, for the military and for the government, certainly not for the general population. And, in other countries of the world, they have underground facilities for the population, but not the U.S. There's that hotel that has the secret bunker in it that had facilities for the Senate and for Congress at one point.
Yeah, you know what? That is so old that it is now opened as a museum, and you can go have a tour.
I know. And they had signs on it, secret facility beneath, type stuff. But I think that the one thing that bothers me is that these facilities are definitely out there, and they are definitely preparing for something, and it leaves those of us on the surface kind of wondering what are they preparing for, that they are making all of these underground facilities so extensive and so hidden. And
they are many of them are connected. There's an underground, probably electromagnetic train that connects many parts of the country. I did interview at some point 2 men who had been in the Air Force, and they were in command positions, but they got out of the Air Force. But on their own, they were investigating, many of these kinds of things. And they confirmed what I've gotten from other people and other sources, that there is an underground, I'll just say it, underground rail system that goes through the Appalachian Mountains from going up toward Washington, D.C.
I think it goes coast to coast from what I've seen and what I've picked up. And what is fascinating is that they're using some sort of machinery that literally melts the rock and then turns it into concrete that they use to construct the tunnels with. So that
basically it melts the rock, and in the process of melting, I guess it's almost like quick dry, and so the tunnel is formed by what they've melted through. It's quite incredible.
Absolutely.
I have a picture of one of those underground boring machines in the book, and imagine it, like a big fat train. That's really what it looks like.
And it moves quite rapidly. And this is something that's been going on for a very long time, because Area 51 has, they've talked about the tunnels under Area 51 for decades now. So it does make one wonder, have we made Swiss cheese of the ground beneath us with all these tunnels and everything that are going on? And why? Why is there need for this kind of secrecy and this kind of, do they know something we don't know? I mean, and we're not the only country doing this. Russia's doing it. China's doing it. A number of other countries, Czechoslovakia, I know, is doing it. I think it started with World War II, but they've kept the tunnels and everything up and staffed. So it does lead one to wonder, what are they preparing for? Are they preparing for nuclear holocaust, or are they preparing for outside invasion? Why is it necessary to do this?
Well, nuclear would be at the top of the list, I'm sure.
Uh-huh.
And hopefully we won't have anybody go nuts and try to do it. I sometimes question the sensibilities of those that are in control. The story that I just posted on the 28th, which was yesterday, one of them is called USA Actually Planned to Nuke the Moon. And believe it or not, pardon me?
I saw that post. Yeah, keep going.
Yeah, now that's not recent, but it gives you an idea of how the thinking can go absolutely bizarre, because the reason that they came up with that plan was because the Russians got the first satellite launched back in the 1957. It was the first satellite, and it was called Sputnik, and anybody who's old enough can remember what an impact it had on the country. Everybody went nuts. You know, we got to get our school systems better. We got to do this. We can't be second place to Russia. But the military actually seriously entertained nuking the moon to show that we were more powerful. Now, it's very interesting that one of the men who actually had a very high job within the U.S. Atomic Energy Commission on his deathbed, or shortly before he died, said that, yes, there had been a plan. It even had a name called Project A119, and it was a plan to detonate an atomic weapon on the moon for scientific purposes. But here's the but that's interesting. But the plan was halted by extraterrestrials. So, anyhow, that's the topic of the most recent posting on the website right now.
Well, with these tunnels that do cross the country all over the place, and quite possibly go across to Europe, I wouldn't doubt it at all. It kind of makes you wonder if there is the thought that perhaps at some point in time humanity will be sent beneath the surface. And if you look back it's in Turkey, I think, where Derinkuyu is. There's a 13-layer tunnel system in Derinkuyu, where I think they said it would hold 5,000 people with cattle and everything else for a period of time. So I'm wondering, what's the point of all this? You know, you get all the secret stuff underground, and then you have the legends, stories that under the Giza Plateau there are many tunnels. So I'm wondering, how deep do they go so that they can get beneath all of the tunnels that are already there? And it is making Swiss cheese of the inside of the planet to a certain degree. And so why? I mean, first of all, we know the tunnels are there. I think there are even pictures out there of the tunnel system that is projected to be there, and it's probably very close to accurate. So what is the point? I mean, what is the point really in if you can get the president to one of these underground facilities by going into the basement? Why build a shelter in the underground of the White House? Why put the president on a plane to fly him someplace when you could put him on a transit thing underground and get him there safer and not expose him to the air?
You ask many good questions, but I'm sure that survival under a bad situation is certainly a motivation for much of it, if not all of it. So let's just hope and pray we don't have a nuclear war.
But what gets me is that this is just for the military.
You and I are not going to get in there. That's for certain.
No, I mean, we still when I was teaching school, and I've been not teaching for a number of years, well, a couple of decades actually, but we used to have those drills where we would have to leave the classroom, we would have to go down into the basement, we'd have to lean against the walls, we'd have to put get the kids down on the floor and have them put their heads in their hands between their legs. I mean, this is this is within the last 20 years. We were still having those kind of drills just in case there was an attack of some sort. Do you mean to tell me that the population, that's our only defense, while the Army and the Congress and the Senate and President and all of them guys are, in a facility where they're waiting out for the radiation to go down? I mean, frankly, there won't be a country left. So,
well, I think you and all your listeners, you and I and all your listeners should be praying very hard that this never comes to fruition. I sincerely hope we never have a nuclear disaster. And
well, I hope so too. But
so
I think one
that's
of the
important.
other things.
So send out the good thoughts.
One of the other things that is important to realize is that we apparently a huge part of our budget goes into facilities like this. And when you think of that hotel that they put millions, maybe billions into, that is now a museum because it's now antiquated, are these tunnels going to become the same? Are we pouring billions of dollars into being prepared for something that doesn't happen? I mean,
we buy auto insurance.
Yes, but my auto insurance doesn't cost billions of dollars.
True. But anyhow, I thought it would be interesting because, another angle of this is just what the people here have run into in the government's effort to keep this all a secret. And some of it's almost laughable. I'll give you an example. At one time, there were elk that lived here in the mountains, and they were died off. I assume they were killed off. And so a number of years ago, they decided they were going to get elk from out west and, start new herds here, and it's been quite successful. And then they came up about during the time that they were doing this building stuff, and I became aware of the building about 2010. And from 2010 to 2013, it seemed to be really intense as far as seeing signs of something really quite incredible going on. Anyhow, back to the elk. If you go by the visitor center on the North Carolina side of the mountain or the park, there is a herd of elk. You're almost guaranteed to see them every morning and every evening, and then during the daytime they hang out in the woods. The people and the traffic and the noise doesn't bother them one bit, yet they established a no-fly zone over the park with the reasoning being that they didn't want to scare the elk. So that's laughable in my opinion. Having been by there so many times, having seen all the traffic and the noise and the people, the elk are not bothered at all. So that's just a bogus reason to keep, aerial viewing of what they've been up to or what they are up to. So I found that kind of interesting.
I think that the government,
go ahead.
The government is so stupid, or they think the population is stupid. I don't know which.
Both are true.
But when the material about Kincaid's Cave in the Grand Canyon and everything came up, and people started to look for the cave. And are you familiar with Kincaid's Cave?
Yes, I am.
Okay, so they had it, pretty much zeroed in on exactly where it was. And when people started to try to go to it or fly to it, because at this point you have to either rappel down a stone wall or whatever. A no-fly zone was established over where it is, and nobody is allowed to go near that area because the condors are nesting.
Right, and that's just as silly as the elk story. I mean, it's just
exactly.
silly. And see, this is another cover-up that's totally different, besides what we're talking about with the underground facilities. There is a great effort to keep our history intact as we've been taught up to this point. And that's part of the reason that they don't want people to really know about, the infamous cave in the Grand Canyon. They have been, the infamous they, has been hiding evidence of giants since the 1800s. Lots
Absolutely.
of giant skeletons were found. It was written up in many, many old newspapers around the country. And many times they would call in the Smithsonian people because they're supposed to be authorities, and they would take the skeletons and they would be lost forever. There's been a number of books now that have come out about how the Smithsonian just, takes and hides these skeletons. I mean, we even had two that were, now I'm getting this secondhand, it's from anthropology students that graduated from Western Carolina University, which is close to where I live. And they independently told me that there were two skeletons in the forensic lab, and they had 6 toes and were giants. Then I was at Dunkin' Donuts one day, and I overheard a conversation, and I kind of jumped into it. It was another anthropology student, and this is a couple years later, and she told me that, yes, that was true about the skeletons, but that the skeletons, those giant skeletons, and also those of the little people, were sent off to the Smithsonian, so they're no longer here, which means we'll probably never see them.
Well, and if anybody's interested in giant materials, especially from newspapers, on my website I have hundreds of links to hundreds of newspaper articles covering several hundred years on my website on the front page.
Very good.
There are hundreds of them.
That's wonderful to know.
Oh yeah, no, and I go way back. I even have quotes from presidents and from astronauts and stuff like that on the website when it comes to the giant material. But yeah, I just it boggles my mind. I understand that if you give the general public too much information, they will panic. I got that, and it's true. While the majority won't, the majority will say, that's fascinating, but I knew that already. There's a great deal of the population that would panic, that would, I don't know, we're being taken over.
There's people so locked into a very strict interpretation of religion that the existence of giants, the existence of ETs, the existence of anything outside the parameters of very narrow Christianity just blows their mind.
Oh, absolutely.
That was probably a muddled sentence.
No, but I understood.
Good.
And it does. It does. It's sort of like it changes your reality, and it opens up to lots of scary stuff. But the reality is our history is fabulous, and there is proof of so much out there that we aren't taught about. And I truly do not believe our government is protecting us. I do believe they are keeping us in the dark on purpose. And I can't figure out why. I really can't.
Right.
I'm sure that there is not only one organization, but there are probably 3 or 4, each thinking they are the top of the tree, so to speak. And everybody's manipulating everybody else. And it leaves us on the surface here wondering what's going on. But with this drilling of these tunnels, it's so deep that, and they're not using dynamite to explode or anything. It is really more of a whirling sound, I am told. It's phenomenal. Just think what it would do with transportation.
Let's go off on the underground sounds. Where the facilities have been built, like the one we're talking about tonight, they have heard explosions. They have felt explosions where they are actually building the facilities. That's different than building a tunnel. The tunnel, they can use that boring machine and cruise through it. Now, we've had, what happens is, if I remember correctly, some of those boring machines can, eat through 7 miles in a day, which is pretty incredible when you think about it, if you're going through, rock like we have here. And there was more than one, but one lady comes to mind right now, and she and her husband were feeling, for X amount of time, vibrations and grinding sounds coming from beneath their home. And that was right along the route where we already had indications that there was a tunnel or a tunnel being built. So during the time that boring machine was going beneath their home, they could hear it and feel it. And as soon as it went past them, well, then that was the end of that. So it kind of gives you an idea of how those kind of sounds, when the tunnels are being built, would be temporary. Also, the explosions, which seem to be where the facilities are actually being expanded underground, they're using explosive things for that to happen. One of the witnesses, more than one, but one in particular I'm thinking about, she went up to Untitled Road, which is the closest you can get to this facility. It actually is like a one-way road that goes along a ridge, so the facility has to be somewhere beneath that. And she heard what she compared to a bridge being built, and the pylons are being pounded. She could hear that sound beneath the ground. Another witness at another one of the facilities was a retired sheriff from Florida, or assistant sheriff, and he was at one place here in the mountains, and he could feel something, and he put his ear up to one of the big rocks, and he could hear mechanical or machinery operating down beneath the ground. So, there's been some really good witnesses that I've been able to talk to when you're talking to former military, and you're talking to, a former sheriff, and you're talking to the people who lived right above where some of this was happening. The witnesses have made this a very, very real reality. But with that said, I want to jump back to the humorous cover-ups.
Okay.
There were two men who worked at the fish hatchery in Cherokee, and it's fed by a creek or a stream that flows into it, and the flow of the water was stopping. So along this creek there is a single-lane dirt road that parallels the creek, and they went up this road thinking that maybe some beaver or something had clogged up the river. And when they got to the top, where there has always been a reservoir, the reservoir was dry. And there was a 50,000-gallon tank where the reservoir was, half buried in it. There were pipes going from that tank down into the ground. So they were diverting the water source to supply the facility beneath the ground. Now, when these two employees at the fish hatchery talked about this, they lost their jobs. But that's not particularly funny. But it's very odd because they closed that road off for 2 years, this Untitled Road, and they said it was because there was a washout. Well, this is the same time that this reservoir was bone dry. So the reason for closing the road was totally bogus. And after this 2-year period, when they opened up the road, it had been totally paved or repaved. And there was nothing wrong with the road, according to the people who lived in the area. And they speculated that heavy equipment had been used on that road, which can tear up a simple road very easily. And that was the reason they repaved it. But the ridiculous part is they're talking about a washout when there were no signs of flooding or washouts anywhere. So that's as bogus as the elk excuse. So they come up with some pretty unbelievable things.
Well, we're supposed to swallow it. We're supposed to say, "Oh, of course,"
Mm-hmm.
And I think that the general public has hopefully come to the conclusion that the government just doesn't always tell the truth.
But there's a downside to that too. I mean, it's great that people are opening up their eyes and realizing we shouldn't swallow all this. At the same time, it seems to fertilize the whole field of conspiracies, and conspiracies have gone totally out of control. And people can cook up conspiracies every which way now. And if you look at those, they're just as ridiculous as the bogus stories that the government tells us. And so people are just a little bit nuts trying to sort it all out.
I think, you've got another article on your website, that's skyshipsovercashiers.com, that does talk about rabbit holes and conspiracy theories.
Oh, that's something I don't normally do. That's under Editor's Corner. And I got totally annoyed with the conspiracy theories, and actually that's the title I gave it. Conspiracy rabbit holes are everywhere. I put it on the Editor's Corner page because it is me spouting off.
Well, I think you're spouting off.
I don't do that on the rest of it. I absolutely try to be as newspaper pure as possible, but I just got totally annoyed when.
You succeed beautifully.
But anyhow, that's the reason I put it on the editor's page.
Well, it's I think relevant to the times. We're at a time where it's hard to know what's truth and what's not, whether it has to do with COVID or it has to do with anything. It gets to the point where you just don't know where to turn, and I guess the best advice to give anybody is to thoroughly research stuff before you freak out and make intelligent choices.
Right.
I don't know what else you can say to people because there's so much craziness going on in this world that, and everybody's aware we don't have all of the information. And it's just a matter of, where do you find the right information? You can find lots of information. You don't know what the truth is.
Right.
So it's research and make, sensible choices and decisions and don't get blackmailed or jerked into a conspiracy theory and go crazy. Pay attention and research. The information is out there.
The creepy thing is that they can use, and I do not understand this, I just know that the word is algorithms on the Internet, can be used so that once you dive into one of these rabbit holes, it will connect you with other things that support that rabbit hole. And then you'll find something else, and that supports this rabbit hole. And so then you begin to think, well, that must be the truth because I'm getting it everywhere. But that kind of information is being targeted to something you've done on the Internet. And so you have to break out of that pattern and go in totally different directions in your effort to search for what's really true.
Yeah, they don't make it easy on you anymore.
No, we really have to work at it.
But I think what is fascinating about your website is the material that you have on it because I trust it. I trust that you have, to the best of your ability, investigated it before you've put it up there. And you don't jump to conclusions. You just put it out there and you let people do the jumping. And that's what I love about your website. You can look at the different articles and you can make your own choices and figure out, just exactly what is going on. I
also try not to just be negative all the time. For example, along with the story that was posted yesterday about the U.S. plan to nuke the moon, I have another one, which I know you're familiar with it because I took it from my book, and it's called Bigfoot and the Shetland Pony. And I encourage, that is just a sweet story. It makes you feel good. And So I try not to just do the heavy-handed conspiracies and bad news and all that. I try to mix it up. I also have thrown in like Navajo wisdom, not lengthy, but I've connected with two respected Native Americans and put some of their thought-provoking ideas out there, and they're uplifting. So, I don't want people to think it's all just, dark, heavy stuff, because it isn't. And
oh gosh, no.
Some of the stuff that's being discovered out in the ethers is just incredible, and stuff that's being discovered, in Antarctica. I mean, it's truly incredible.
I noticed in that article it appears to be actual cities that somebody discovered. I mean, you're famous for being on the internet with Google Earth, and apparently, is that where this lady found the outline of the really metropolis that she discovered?
Yeah, and that's actually breaking news, to the point where I've written articles just yesterday and sent them off to different magazines because I want the story to get out there. It was just discovered on the 18th of September. So that's really, really new. And the woman she's really been providing me with a lot of information. She is really not that old, but at the age of 47, she had a stroke that almost killed her. So she is disabled.
Oh, this is the same lady. Okay.
It's the same lady. And she has found an outlet for her time that's proving to be very productive. She has the time, which most of us don't feel like we have, where she will meticulously start looking for things. And she had been looking for signs of ancient life in Antarctica since last May, or this past May. Uh-huh. And on the 18th, she found it. And you can see the walls of an ancient structure. Now, to put this in perspective, the Antarctica has been covered in ice for, it depends on who you talk to, but at least 23 million years. Some say 34 million years. That's a long time. So if things are now appearing because the ice is melting so fast, that stuff is really old. That's like in the millions of years old. Compare that to anything else we know, it's drastically different. I mean, most people, the authorities seem to think that the Great Pyramid was built, like 2,600 years ago, something in that range. In 26, no, I'm saying that wrong, in 2600 BC, which is less than 5,000 years ago. If I'm doing math in my head quickly, I don't have my notes in front of me. And that's nothing. That's nothing compared to millions of years. So I am truly excited about this discovery. And by Friday, that story will be updated. Right now it's at the top on the home page. Let me look at it here. It's on the home page. It's the third story from the top on the right-hand side. We're going to update that by Friday, and it includes the story of Mary Hall, who's the one who made this discovery. And I think people will find it really interesting. So wait until Friday, because then maybe the whole story will be there.
Well, because there was a polar shift, at one time, Antarctica was actually a tropical area. So
absolutely was. I did a story, and I didn't originate the research on this, and neither did Mary Hall, but researchers from a university found fossils that show all sorts of, warm climate plant leaf fossils. So
now,
it's been quite a different place.
There's also that canister that was found, the 540-foot canister, and God, that almost looks like it was military type stuff from I don't know, a satellite or something.
Well, one of the people who follows the Facebook page, because we also have a Facebook page where I put stuff up, maybe every 2 or 3 days. And it was a very interesting response. There is a Russian icebreaker that got lost or fell apart or whatever, and it's about, according to this person, about the same dimensions as this thing I call a canister. It could be that. We're not saying, I don't make any conclusions in this article. It could be that. It could be something ancient that's rolled down this avalanche that you can also see in this photo. Who knows?
I mean, it looks man-made to me. I don't know why.
Absolutely
it
does.
And it feels as though it's newer. It's not ancient. It doesn't feel like this is a UFO type thing at all. It feels like this is something of ours. It looks big and clunky enough so that it looks like it's probably something we did.
I think that the Russian icebreaker might truly be what that is. I don't know. Perhaps I can dig into that deeper and do an update on that story, but right now, this is all I know.
Or a submersible of some sort that got caught and swept out or something like that. In other words, it looks like there's a really real explanation for this one. This is not a mystery. This is just something that hasn't been identified yet. Your website always has such fascinating material on it that like I said earlier, it makes one want to check it out. And what I love about your Google Earth stuff, you give the latitude and longitude so people can actually, put it into their Google Earth and go and check out what you found. And it makes for a very exciting time. And so long as we have internet until somebody does an EVP and wipes us all out, or EVP, yeah. It's fascinating because you've found stuff on Mars, you've found stuff on the Moon, and you've absolutely found a tremendous amount of stuff in Antarctica. So that it's amazing. It's amazing material. You can do research right from your own home, and you'd be close to the bathroom and the kitchen. So without having to put on a parka. So it
right. This is really great for those of us like myself who really find archaeology fascinating, but there's no way I'm going to be able to go down to Antarctica and, even survive in that cold, let alone dig around. So this is really a nice way to be able to really be an archaeologist from your own computer. And one of the reasons that I put the coordinates there is because we live in a time when so many people get some kind of kick out of creating bogus Photoshop images. And so if I give people the coordinates, they can go find things for themselves. Occasionally, when I have tapped into something that they don't want people to know about, it will be blurred out from the time that I see it originally. In one case, when I found an entrance into Antarctica, when I went back to it like a day or two later, it's like somebody spilled India ink all over it, so you couldn't find it again. So sometimes, that also tells me a lot. That tells me that's an active entrance, and they don't want you to know about it.
Yeah. And the other thing that fascinated me with your new stuff is the prehistoric little people dwellings in India. I wonder, they could be for little people, but they could be Stone Age dog houses too.
But there's so many of them, I just can't imagine they would build that for that many dogs. So
probably not. But but stop and think. They had domesticated dogs by then. They were probably sleeping in the caves, keeping people warm. However, but
are you familiar with the term from Australia about a 3-dog night?
No. Oh yeah, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, actually.
In case somebody doesn't know about it, there was a song a long time ago called 3-Dog Night, and it was because of the old Australian saying when it was really cold, you had a dog on each side and one on top of you to keep warm. So it was a 3-dog night.
I was at a boyfriend's house once for a weekend, and we had an ice storm, and I had my dog with us, and we were sleeping on the floor in the living room by the fireplace, and I realized when he cuddled up to my dog, it was like, one dog night. It made a great deal of sense then. But yeah, no. But these, you have, what I love is you have pictures, you have the story, and then you turn it loose and let people's imaginations go from there. And that has to take a tremendous amount of expertise and restraint all at the same time. Sometimes I get the feeling that you want to say something more, but you can't validate it, so you don't.
Well, there's two reasons I don't do it. One, it might be that. Another reason is I realize that most people are busy or have very short attention spans, and so I use photos, and I try to be as condensed as I can. So I'm constantly making myself try to write in a brief form, because otherwise you lose half the people.
That's true. That's true, and that's why your books are so fabulous. The book about Bigfoot, Bigfoot Beyond the Footprints, I think is the title of the book. It's my favorite of all the books you've written, and it's the one that I've given as gift.
If people want to get a hint of it, this story that I posted yesterday, Bigfoot and the Shetland Pony, go to Skyships Over Cachers and read that. You'll get a feel of a little bit of what that book is like.
Oh, it's the sweetest book ever. I mean, it's just, I cried. It was so sweet. And I've read your other books too, and they're really good. But the Bigfoot book just touched my heart. It was presenting Bigfoot in a loving, sweet manner, so that it's so long as you don't, it's kind of like you don't infringe upon them and they won't infringe upon you, and it feels to me, and especially because they've even been known to help people that were hurt or needed help. I mean, they aren't monsters. They have hearts and they have families, and there's a kindness about them that is just so genuine. It's wonderful. And I'm not saying go into the woods and, if somebody's beating on the trees and throwing rocks at you, don't go, I come in peace,
Mm-hmm.
Realize you have gone someplace you don't need to go. But people who live in the area where Bigfoots are, and they don't, they share their gardens with them. It's a beautiful friendship.
But they only make friends with people that are kind-hearted. People who are hostile, people who are angry, people who carry guns, people that they will not warm up to you. They will try to avoid you at all costs. And if people are trying to hunt them to have the proof that they exist, you better believe they're not going to hang around and let you do that.
Oh, Lord, no. But your Bigfoot book is the sweetest book ever, and I highly recommend it to people. It's a book I would share with children. It's a wonderful, wonderful book.
Thank you.
I love your Jesus book too. I love your Little People book. I love the tunnel book, the military book. But Bigfoot, my favorite.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Oh, you're so welcome. But your website also, you've been doing it for a number of years, and all of the archives are here, and the archives go back to forever. And
let me clarify that, because people are going to think they're going to go back into the last century. We started the website in 2008, and even to this day, there's the archives in each section has its own archives. Even to this day, people will find stuff that's brand new to them back in, from years ago.
Absolutely, but, come on, 2008, 18, 19, 20, 20. All right, so that's 13, 14 years. That's a lot. And you still keep coming up with new stuff. And you can follow a thread through time on a lot of the topics that you've gone back and you've expanded upon, and certainly the ET stuff has become more and more intriguing. The Dr. Von Braun material is fascinating. I mean, if you go back to 2008 and you look at the material there, it's
not as evolved, because we started out, and that's the reason we have the name Skyships Over Cachers. We started out with the fact that there were an unusual number of UFOs that were being seen over this mountaintop town called Cachers. But, that seems like baby stuff now, because, we continue to expand on this whole thing. So as this website grows, as I grow, as the audience grows, it just simply evolves and includes so much more.
Well, and you put things out in a brilliant manner so that people can read it and chew on it and talk about it, and they don't have to put their glasses on and sit and read for hours, although that has happened to me any number of times in your archives. You just want to see what else is there on certain topics, and certainly, the Antarctic material has fascinated me, for a ton of years, and back to Admiral Berg and Operation High Jump and all of that stuff. So, but you touch on so many different topics in different ways and aspects, and then as you have evolved in your investigations, you add to it, and it's amazing material. It truly is, and I just noticed the time, and we're out.
Well, it's always a joy to talk to you. You're very kind with your compliments. I appreciate that. And just a reminder, let everyone know that go back and read the Antarctica story, maybe the weekend, because I would love everybody to learn a little bit more about Mary Hall, who's really finding some fantastic stuff, and she's finding more, which we will share with people.
That's so exciting.
But anyhow, by Saturday, it definitely should be up.
Okay. I will make
All
sure
right.
I check it out. And
okay.
Everybody, Mary's website is skyshipsovercashiers.com. This will be up on YouTube and Rumble as well. And stay tuned. We will be back next month with more fascinating material. And thank you, Mary, so much for being with me tonight.
Thank you. You have a good evening.
You too. Good night, everybody. Check us out on YouTube. And if you like what you see and hear, please subscribe, because that's how we know you're listening. Good night now.